Welcome to a little tutorial on the appositive phrase. I'm used to doing this live, so let's see how it goes. But I'm going to give you the exact same lesson I would if you were here. Now, this is a book by Don Kilgallen. I found it at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia about 20 or so years ago, and I just think it's one of the best supports that I've ever found. So my students, we've used this and it's worked their way into students' papers. And so the thing that's most important here is that we worry about sexy sentence structures. This is what we're looking at here. We're looking at sex appeal. All right. Now, first of all, Kilgallen, here, let me get in tighter here. Kilgallen shows you 4 sentences that have had some parts deleted, but they're still complete sentences. It went away slowly. The land that lay stretched out before him became of vast significance. However, I looked with a mixture of admiration and awe at Peter. The night in the south upstairs chamber, Emmett lay in a kind of trance. These are what we call simple subject, simple verb sentences. They have a subject, they have a verb, they have a subject, verb, subject, verb. And so they're very straightforward. Now, what a sexy sentence is, and you don't always need a sexy one, but a sexy one is where you add something spicy to it. Now, this is what we're talking about. Enter the appositive phrase. It went away slowly. Now, that's just like this one up here that's very simple. Watch when an appositive is added. It went away slowly. The feeling of disappointment that came sharply after the thrill that made his shoulders ache. Wow. The land that lay stretched out before him became of vast significance. A place peopled by his fancy with a new race of men sprung from himself. However, I looked with a mixture of admiration and awe at Peter, a boy who could and did imitate a police siren every morning on the way to the showers. And how about this one by Jasmine West? That night in the south upstairs chamber, a hot little room where a full-leaf chinaberry tree shut out all the air from the single window, Emmett lay in a kind of trance. Man, that's just good stuff. Now, as he says here, the bold-faced phrases are appositive phrases. Now, what the heck is an appositive? Check it out. And appositives are noun phrases that identify adjacent nouns and pronouns. Now, here's the key word. Noun. Remember, a noun describes a person, place, thing, or it can also describe an abstract idea like freedom or love. They're abstract because you can't touch them, but they're still nouns. Now, appositives come in 3 kinds, like most of our sentence structures. They come in the opener position, in between the subject and verb, and at the end. And the cool thing about these is that you can mix them around. So for instance, well, let's get started. Let's take a look at an appositive phrase in the opener position. And so what I'd like to do is show you first what the main subject and verb of the sentence is. Now, the main subject of this sentence is Harriet, and the verb is was. Was is a verb that is the verb to be. And that means that am, is, are, was, and were, these are verbs. Please write that down. Kids will not believe me. They think every verb has to be action. It is not. So if this is the main clause, that's the main clause right here, the main subject and verb. What you have left is what I like to call a gravy phrase. Maybe it's because my mother was from the South. I don't know. They put gravy on everything. They took shots before a meal with it. I don't even know. But this, to me, the main clause is the meat and potatoes. You have to have that on the plate. Everything else, an extra clause, is gravy, which means it enhances the meal, but it doesn't consist of the whole meal. And that's where you're going to find the appositive phrase, in the gravy phrase. It's a phrase that can be pulled out of the sentence, and the sentence can still make sense. So Harriet was a moody, willful child. Bam. put that sucker in. Now we learn a little bit more about Harriet. Now, one is the appositive, the noun that modifies the noun. Now, this is where kids get confused because they assume they know what they're doing. Listen to me. An appositive phrase has to be a noun phrase or a noun that modifies an adjacent or nearby noun. So you might say, well, she's a sister, so that's the word that modifies. Well, your modifier can't come within a prepositional phrase. We'll talk about that later. Don't panic about that. Let's go to an easier one. So our main clause is he could have been. So that's your main clause. That's your meat and potatoes. That's your M and P. Now we've got left over this gravy phrase. We could take it out and it would still be a complete sentence. Now we have this. And so what word in here is a noun? Man. Now, does man doesn't just modify, it renames, it re-identifies. See, here's the key word, identify. So man is he and he is man. Now here's the key, watch this. If I took out man and said balding and smooth-faced, he could have been anywhere from, that still would be a complete sentence, but it's not an appositive. It's a good sentence if we took this and made this, but this would be an adjective phrase if we took out man, because there is no noun. The noun is the key. It's a noun that renames another noun. So if you take a look here, he took, this is the main clause. So what we have left is this gravy phrase, and we say, which one of these in here is a noun that renames this? The boy is he is a boy, the boy is he. You need to be able to make that connection, and that's what an appositive phrase is. Now look at this. The subject-verb split is one of my personal favorites. Papa, a good quiet man, spent the last hours before our parting moving aimlessly about the yard. We had Papa as the subject. What did Papa do? He spent. So here's our main clause. So this is a split. The subject-verb split goes between the subject and the verb. And it goes right in there. And we have, let's take a look at this now. We have a man is Papa, Papa is a man. There's re-identifying there. Boom. Now the closers are a little different, but they're pretty cool too. But you got to have your punctuation going. Look. The boy looked at them, comma, big, black, ugly insects. Now, if you took out that comma, it'd sound like this. The boy looked at them, big, black, ugly insects. So you need a comma there because insects, the boy looked is the main clause. Insects modifies them, which is a pronoun or a noun. So insects are them, they are insects. This one, hour after hour he stood there, silent, motionless. So he stood so this is the main clause. What's left over is the gravy phrase. And so you might say a shadow carved in ebony. Well, let's see. The shadow is he and he is the shadow. Two nouns, a noun re-identifies. Now the shadow's not right up against he, but it's modifying the noun that comes. So this is the only pronoun in this or noun here, and then all of a sudden one comes up. Now that's a lot of pronouns, nouns, all that kind of business, but you'll get used to it. +2, it's a big part of the SAT. So if you need impetus, there you go. Now here's how I want you to do this. This is how I want you to do practice 1. I want you in your journal to write this down in the toolbox section. I'd like you to put positives at the top. And I'd like you to say appositives are sexy. I would like you to name your paper that. So I want you to put that down. I know it feels weird, but I want you to feel it. Write it down. Then say practice 1. Now, the only thing I don't like about Don Kilgallen's piece is that his directions can be a little fascinating. So let's number the directives. Let's get used to that. So it says each scrambled sentence has one or more appositives. One or more. Now that's not a directive, that's just a statement. Now we have a command, identify them. So that's our first one, is to look and identify the appositive phrases. Then our second directive is unscramble the sentence part and write out the sentence, punctuating it correctly. Forget this, we'll do this in class on Friday. So here's what I want you to do. I'll do the first one with you. So you look at the sentence and you try to figure out, I like to figure out what the sentence says first. So I say, she did what? She struggled as usual. To do what? To maintain her calm, composed, friendly bearing, which was a sort of mask she wore all over her body. So if I were doing this, I would do mine like this. First of all, I'll put a number 1 there. Now I've got to identify what's the appositive phrase here. Struggled as usual, that can't be it because it's a noun. Pronoun sitting all by itself, that's the subject. So there's your main clause. To maintain her calm, composed, friendly bearing. An appositive phrase is not going to start with an infinitive or a verb. This one, a sort of mask, now that is a noun, a sort. If you can put a or the in front of a word and it works, you have a noun. So we have, this is our appositive phrase. So I'm going to put the letter D here to indicate that's our appositive phrase. Now I'm actually going to ask you to write out the sentence, not for busy work, but I want you to feel where to punctuate it. And so I will write this. She struggled as usual to maintain her calm, friendly bearing, comma, a sort of mask she wore all over her body. Good. So I have she struggles usual. Here is my appositive phrase, a sort of mask, and I've separated it. So this is a closer. Now, you're going to do that for each one. So you're going to do 1 through 8. Now, one thing I must warn you about, when you get to number 6, do not tell me it's impossible and it doesn't work. It works every year. But there is one thing that's making your life miserable. X out that period at the end on E. Notice there's no punctuation in any of these. The editor threw a period in there and that messes you up. So X that out. So 1 through 8, it should look like this. I'll take a picture of it and put it up. And thank you for watching. See you Friday. Study vocab, don't do drugs.